Hey everyone, it's Phoenix, and I wanted to make a video to talk about the new features in the version 1.14 of Assigned Storage, which changes a ton of the functionality of the mod, and there's also a couple things for upgrading that I wanted to cover. Let me just jump into it. I guess the first thing to be aware of is that when you are upgrading from a version before 1.14, there is something that you need to do, which is load up the container setup spell, um, cast that, and you're going to see some different options now because this is the new version. But basically, what you want to do is go to configure options, and in the old version, you're going to see the option reset mod. So click on that and then click reset, and basically that's just going to pull all of the items you have stored from all of your assigned storage back to your character's inventory, and reset the list. The main thing that's important is because some of the containers changed, is that you pull all your items out of all the storage, so that will do that automatically for you. Once you've done that, just create a new save and exit, and then just upgrade the mod as normal, replace the old version, then you can load up that save. There's no more waiting for building the filters, so that's pretty much it. You'll be good to go. So that's the main disclaimer to get out of the way, is that to upgrade you have to do that. Just pull all your stuff out of storage. It's also on the main description page. So this is the new version loaded. Like I said, when you load it up for the first time, there's no more waiting for storage lists. This does use SKSE and J containers, and I have links in the install for how to get those set up to use it. A main thing that is different with this version is that it has categories separated for everything, each with their own list that can learn custom items. So there's no more sort of consolidated lists where before you had like alchemy, ingredients, potions, and poisons all in one, or like books, scrolls, and spell tomes were all one category, and that kind of thing. They're all separated out now, and it's not. There's an option for either, and I guess the best way is just to show when you actually go to assign a container. So I've just loaded up the spells. They're under alteration. The setup spell is like the options and stuff, and the assignment spell is to assign a container. So when I cast the assignment spell and then I activate a container, when I hit choose a category to assign to it, you're going to get this new menu this time where you can either assign a parent category, which is kind of like before. They're kind of like the main categories that cover everything, or you can assign it to an individual type. So I'll just show you. If you go into parent categories, these are all of the different categories of things. And there's a special one here, sorter. This is a requested feature where if you assign this, basically it's not actually a container. If you activate this, it just is the same as casting the setup spell and hitting store all. It just stores everything that you have in your inventory that matches any of your lists, whether it's the default lists or things you've custom added to any list. It stores them all to their appropriate containers. So that's just a new option. But what I wanted to show was that if you assign one of the parent categories, that's a special one. That's not technically a parent category, but that's where that is under parent. But these are all parent categories. When you assign one, like books, for example, you'll see it says master book storage, and basically you've got the old option where you can store any of the things that are subcategories for that master category. But the cool thing about these now is that what they will do is that they will actually pull all of the I'm going to go ahead and hit store all. So right now you see some scrolls, you see some spell tomes. I don't actually have any books, but what this container does is if I go over here and I assign this to now if I go to individual types, I'm going to see those same categories, but if I click one, it's actually then going to show me the individual categories for those, so I can actually choose just one thing and just assign this to just spell tomes, and you'll see that those two spell tomes are there. But what's really cool about the master categories is when you activate them, they actually go out and they pull all the items that are in all the individual container, like spell tomes, books, scrolls, that fall under this subcategories of this master storage type. They go out and they pull all those items and they consolidate it into this. So what you'll do is you'll activate this and you'll see, all of the spell tomes and all of the scrolls and all of the books. It pulls them all in so you can see them all and browse through all of them at once. And then when you close it, it dumps them back into the appropriate container they go to. So very cool feature. And also it's kind of smart, like if you were to dump some random thing into this thing, it's going to detect that and say, these are only for showing all the items in their subcategories. Manually adding items to these master lists, to the parent list, does not actually add custom items to any list. So you have to dump items into the appropriate, you have to assign a subcategory like spell tomes and dump custom mod added spell tomes into that to have the spell tomes list learn that, so that when you hit store all, it will store those to the appropriate container in the future. So adding items to the master storage doesn't actually do anything. And if you add things that are not, if you added like things, say spell tomes that the spell tomes list already knew, that normally would get stored when you store it all or hit store from the spell tomes container, if you dump those in there manually, when you close this, you won't get this message. It'll just sort those off to their appropriate place automatically. But if you dump things that are not part of its subcategories lists, it will detect that those don't belong, and it will actually, give you that message, and it'll just throw them right back in your inventory. It won't even take it. So these are basically just for viewing all of the different subcategories. So you have the ability to assign things as parent categories that behave like I just showed you and pull everything in. You also, obviously, if you saw there, you get the cancel this. You get the option to, oops, my spell's still active. 3 seconds. The assignment spell lasts 3 seconds. If I had my my Sky UI configured, I would have seen the little timer on there, but I don't. But like with the master containers, you have the option to store all or any one of those individual categories. So if you didn't want to, if you wanted to just assign a master storage for a small house or something where there's not a lot of space for containers, but you wanted to hang on to your scrolls or your spell tomes or whatever, you could actually just store books, and it's only going to dump, I don't have any books, so it's going to tell me that, but it won't actually dump those spell tomes that I am carrying because I only chose books. So you can use these in a small house to save space, and they still have the sorting functionality, and you can still use them to see everything. So you have the option to assign a master category thing now, which behaves like that, or individual types, and each one of these individual categories has, there's a lot more options now. Like alchemy is pretty much the same. You can assign a container to just ingredients, potions, just poisons. Go through these real quick. Books, I think we saw books, scrolls, spell tomes, crafting. Okay, so you've got ore and ingots, you've got leather, scale, and bone, which is kind of a better category than I had before, which leaves a little bit open because you can now scale and bone. I mean, normally it was, I think I had a category for like dragon scale, dragon bone. It was very limited. Like, why would you ever use a storage container for just those two things? So now this is a little more open. All the leather items, so like pelts and all that stuff, and also scale and bone leaves that kind of open to like, yeah, dragon items, but also bone, like that could be like troll skulls or those bird beaks or whatever the heck they are that you use to make those custom necklaces for the Forsworn. I don't remember, but it makes the category a little more open. And then there's a new one, housing and random materials. So this is cool because all of like the nails and hinges and stuff like that you can put in here, and it's in the pre-made list. Or random materials is kind of nice because a lot of mods add a lot of custom construction stuff. So random materials is good to have a category that you can dump random materials into. So that's kind of cool. Something else I should mention is that all of these lists have been rebuilt as far as like the pre-made lists of things that get sorted before you start adding mod added items and stuff to exclude anything that is like a quest item or an item that can't be removed from your inventory. So like you couldn't sneak activate a container and add it to the ignore list because you can't actually drop it from your inventory, so you can't drop it in the container to teach it to ignore it. So those aren't included. In fact, I went to UESP, the unofficial Elder Scrolls page, and they have a database of all the items in the game by category. So I actually went there, and for each of these categories, I actually rebuilt the lists from scratch by hand for all of the pre-sorted stuff, so that it's only safe items, only items you would actually want to have stored. So that's kind of neat. So there's cooking ingredients and food and drink. You can have a separate container for each of those now. Equipment, you can have separate containers for weapon, armor, clothing. Soul gems, empty or full. Valuables, okay, so jewelry, gems, golden treasure, that's kind of a new one. This is the one where if you assign it to gold, it's kind of a special category where when you activate it, it gives you the option to choose an amount of gold that you want to always keep on your character. But then when after you've selected that, if you hit store all, it will dump your gold up to that point. So if you had like 5,000 gold in your inventory and you set the limit for the gold to be always keep at least 1,000, and there's a lot of different options for how much to keep, up to like 50,000 or something, it will store 4,000 automatically and keep 1,000 if that's what you set. So it's kind of neat. Or you can turn that off. It's off by default. So by default, it won't actually store any of your gold automatically. And you can also this is also a learning container, so you can, if you get like those Dwemer coins or something else that is considered sort of like mods that add coins, if there's a lot of different kinds of coins, you can kind of dump them in there with your gold, and it'll auto store and learn those items, so that's kind of neat. And then masks and claws, I tried to leave that an open-ended thing because it could include potentially like mod added things like the masks from immersive armor, like the ordinator masks or stuff. So this can also kind of be a wildcard category. I tried to leave the categories as open as possible while also covering all the items in the game. So that was valuables, and then miscellaneous. So miscellaneous has got the portable containers, which are the droppable containers from this mod. Keys, of course I had to have a random container, so this is like, a container you can assign to just dump, I don't know, brooms, and by default it stores all the random items that are used at the Atronach Forge, so like burned books, I can't even remember, there's like only like 9 or 10 of them, but a category for random stuff is cool to have. And then garbage is another new one, where if you assign something to garbage, you can dump items into there. It won't do anything by default, so it's kind of like a recycle bin on your computer. It doesn't delete them permanently by default. You actually have to activate it again and then choose the empty garbage, which is kind of like emptying the recycle bin. At that point, though, it deletes those items permanently, so you can actually get rid of stuff that you don't want by just dumping them in the garbage and activating again and emptying the garbage. So that's kind of a cool container. So that's all of there's a ton of containers. I think the total, combining the individual ones here and the parent categories, I think there's 33 container types that you can assign. So there's a ton more than there was before. And that is the main change. Also, using SKSE, I was able to do a lot of tricky script stuff. So again, like when you first load the mod, there's no more waiting for the initial filters to build. It's instant. You'll also notice a lot of the other functionality is a lot quicker. Restoring items from the crafting stations, if you link those, is a lot quicker. A couple little changes, like I added a crafting station type that will pull the cooking ingredients in for the grain mill, where you push the grinding wheel around, because that wasn't actually covered before. So that does pull in ingredients. And then one last cool thing I wanted to mention is that this does have an option now. I guess I should just go into the options here, because there's a couple new options in here. So add portable containers is the same. Basically, you can add all the movable storage stuff from there. So that didn't change. Store all is the same. Access storage. This is basically you get the same lists. This is just the ability to access any of those assigned containers remotely, even if you don't have them assigned. I mean, it's cloud storage, so you don't actually have to assign any of these categories to an actual container anywhere in the world to use them. You can just go to access storage and then browse those categories. You can browse the parent categories or individual types. And choose one that you want to open, and it'll open that container, that global storage, from anywhere you are in the world, and you get the same sorting function as if you were actually standing in front of it. So like here, since I have a couple of, in fact, I'll just take these out too. So if I were to go in and do, access storage, go to parent categories, books. It will give you the same menu if it detects any sortable stuff. So I could store all right now, and it would work just like I had actually assigned a container and was standing in front of it, and take those and sort them, and then now it distributes them out to their subcategories. So that's kind of cool. It's the same as before, but the lists are bigger. The main things that were added is under configure options. Configure station settings is the same. You can add ignore lists or add custom items to individual station types to have them pull in separate from the other category lists. There's an uninstall option which will safely disable all of the quests, the scripts and stuff, and let you make a save. One new thing is retrieve all. This is the opposite of store all. It will actually grab every item in all of your global storage and pull it all back into your inventory. This is useful for like testing or combined with reset filters, which is also kind of new. Since all of the filter lists are handled externally in JSON database files now, there's no need to have a full reset of the mod function. So this is actually a cool feature that will let you basically reset all of the, like when you add custom mod added items to a container and until it, when you exit, it'll ask you want to learn these so they sort in the future. So all the custom items, all your containers have learned, and then when you sneak activate a container and dump items in it to tell it to, ignore those items if it's sorting something you don't want it to, reset filters will reset all of that to default. So useful if you screw something up or if you just want to start over from the default lists. So that's a cool option to have, and you can use it in conjunction with retrieve all, so you can reset filters and then retrieve all your items, and that will let you have all your stuff with you. You can then sort all, and then whatever you have left, you can then rebuild your filters, fixing whatever you screwed up, having all those things in your inventory again. So those kind of work together. The main new thing, which is really cool, is ignore equipped. Okay, so this is something that was not possible before, but using SKSE is now absolutely possible, and it's working it's virtually instant. So there's no additional lag. That was a little tricky to get set up, but SKSE is pretty amazing. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So I was able to actually build a script that doesn't just sit there and go, one item at a time for everything in the list. Is it equipped? No. It actually, what it does is it will build a quick list of everything that is in your current equipment slots. There's like, I don't know, 28 or so slots that you can technically have on your character. So it does a quick check on your character for any equipped items, and then it basically uses that as a filter for the I guess, what is the best way to put it without getting too technical? Essentially, what it's doing is it's not so much ignoring equipped items as it is automatically detecting the type of item and adding that automatically to the ignore list for whatever appropriate category. So for example, it's on by default. I mean, you can go and you can turn it off. It's not really recommended because then you have to actually like sneak activate, clothing and armor and weapons containers individually and add the stuff that you're currently using to them, and then add them back without sneaking when you change your weapon and armor, and sneak activate, add the new ones. It's really kind of a pain. With this, it does it automatically. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's see here. I'll equip the clothes, the boots, I'll leave the gloves off, and I'll equip the hat and the necklace, but I'll leave the ring off. And then I'll go ahead and store all, and what you'll see is that it's going to do the storing thing, and then it's going to come back and say, okay, well, 33 items were stolen, 4 equipped items were ignored. So, and it says check for duplicates. So you'll see like all the things I didn't have equipped, and this is not learned yet. It's a custom mod added item, so that's why that's not stored. Same with these, but this is something that would normally have been stored, but it's now added that to the ignore lists for clothing. So you'll notice that if you do store all again, it's not actually going to say that because it's added those to the ignore list. So it just says, you know, stored 0 items. So what you can do though is if let's go ahead and assign this to clothing, and you're going to see the gloves are in there. The one thing I didn't have equipped, so it actually did get stored. Say you change your equipped armor in the future, so you have like different stuff. What you can do is you can just go to the container that the auto ignore equipped set them to the ignore list for. Go to that container and then just those items that were ignored, just drop them into the container and re-add them to the sort list. So now, since you've re-added those, if you were to do store all again, it's now going to actually store those again. So it makes it way easier. You don't ever have to worry about your equipped items. If you've got something equipped, it's not going to get stored as long as you have that option on, which is really, really cool. All you have to do is and you'll notice that, you know, if you change your armor and you do store all and certain things that you think should be stored or not, all you have to do is just dump them into the appropriate container and it'll learn, and from then on it'll store them again. So makes it very super easy instead of having to manage it and worry that, you know, especially like if you've got a lot of sets that like the what is some of those new awesome sets, the oh, it's moored something or other. I can't remember. But, I mean, it's got like, you know, 8 or so items that you equip. It's got like tassets and you know, barrettes and feathers and like veils and like metal brace sabatons that go over your boots and things. So there's like tons and tons of parts of the set. And then your jewelry, and so with all those things equipped, it's easy to like, you know, do store all, and then, you know, did some enchanted thing get stored and then have to go and check. I mean, it's easy to like, you know, lose track of whether or not you just lost part of your stats to something getting stored. So now you don't have to worry about it. Now your equipped stuff will never get stored. So that's really cool. Other than that, a lot of the rest of the options are kind of the same. The crafting station stuff you can link and unlink. When you activate a crafting station, pulling in all the assorted like cooking ingredients at a cooking station, like blacksmithing materials and that sort of thing. So it's automatically there, is the same. And then you can assign station items. So like separate from the other filters, you could go and say like you wanted, if a mod added items, or like for example Ordinator has a perk where you can sacrifice a flawless gem when you activate when you first start enchanting to boost a particular stat. If you wanted to add flawless gems to your so that when you activate it enchanting, it pulls in your flawless gems, but you don't want flawless gems to store with your soul gems. You want them to store in the gems box. But if you go into the crafting categories, you can actually, these are separate lists. So I could add flawless gems to enchanting, and it'll pull those in when I activate an enchanting station. But if I do store all, it will still put those in, you know, the gems box. So they're separate. It allows you to pull things in that aren't normally in those categories. So that's kind of cool. And that's pretty much it. Make sure that, like I said, you do the initial pulling of all your stuff with the reset mod option before you upgrade, so that you don't risk losing any items when you upgrade. And then make sure you follow the install instructions to get SKSE set up It's basically, that one's really easy. You just copy it. And same thing with J containers. It's a real easy install. You basically just copy it. And I think with J containers, you can even use Nexus Mod Manager, so it even makes it easier. So that is the latest version of assigned storage, 1.14. Let me know if you find any kind of behavior that isn't expected, or maybe there was something. The only thing I can think of would be books, because there's actually like 527 um, books in the default non-quest book category on UESP, because the game has a ton of books, and that's excluding things like notes and bounty letters and stuff like that. That's just books. So if you find something that is technically a quest item that you don't think should be auto sorted, that is being auto sorted, let me know. It's real easy to manage the lists now because they're external to the game, so you don't even have to load it up in the editor anymore. You can just open up the text files and edit out that item ID from the list, and that's all you have to do to remove it from the pre-made. And then they just reset your lists, and that's it. So. But let me know if there's any weirdness. I will definitely be looking for posts, because this is a pretty big upgrade, and I've done a lot of play testing. But if any weird little bugs do still crop up that I missed, I will squash them as soon as someone reports them. So I hope that you enjoy the new version and all the new changes, and have fun.